Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the championship round of Alsp Debate Competition 2021. Our finalists this year are Team C, arguing as the affirmative, and Team A as the negative. Which team will be the champion of this year's Alsp Debate competition? This nice proposition, let it be resolved that Ayuda be made mandatory with the LGU covering the costs. First affirmative speaker, Tony, you have 4 minutes to tell us why would it be mandatory for Ayuda to be mandatory with the LGU covering the costs.
Your Honors, fellow councils, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. The affirmative side proposes that Ayuda be mandatory to micro-business enterprises with local government unit covering the costs. Allow me to set the parameters of this debate. Section 3 Republic Act No. 9501 Magna Carta for micro, small, and medium enterprises shall be defined as any business or activity or enterprise engaged in industry, activities, and or services, whether single, proprietorship, cooperative, partnership, or corporation, whose total assets, inclusive of those arising from use, while exclusive of the land on which the particular business entity's office, plant, and equipment are situated, and they have the value falling under categories. Ladies and gentlemen, the affirmative side delimits target beneficiaries to micro-enterprises with asset not more than 3 million. The affirmative side limits micro-enterprises that lie in the bottom 30% of the population in terms of household income. This is adapted in a study based on the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on micro, small, and medium enterprises, or MSMEs. The reason behind the delimitation on micro-enterprises is that low customer demand coupled with restrictions resulting from the lockdown have resulted in a sharp decline in the income of MSMEs, provided that in the Philippines, about 90% of all businesses are categorized as micro-businesses based on Furthermore, Ayuda, which refers to cash or in-kind assistance, has primarily covered mostly the poorest of the poor with low-income households as beneficiaries. Study further indicates that 66% of enterprises not receive initial support from social network in the government. Provided with LG sources of funds such as local taxes and fees, internal revenue allotment, grants, loans, a one-time cash assistance will be provided to existing registered micro-enterprises to sustain either operational expenses or additional capital expenses. The computation of the applicable amount for Ayuda shall be patterned to the computation of local business taxes. These are usually based on an enterprise's financial statement or sworn declaration of gross sales or receipts to be guided by the local government unit pursuant to the Bureau of Local Government Finance. Micro-enterprises with a minimum requirement of business permits from LGU shall be the basis for the eligibility of a micro-enterprise. The funds will be released in every city or municipality. The database shall be based on local government units, specifically, once again, municipal and city records. Ladies and gentlemen, the proposed cash assistance will further help the micro-enterprises sector to restore business confidence in operations, as well as strengthen continuity of enterprises. LGU's initiative of... Yes, Your Honor.
Remind remind me again why the typical recipients of these Ayuda, such as indigents and lowest income earners, are not part of your policy?
Thank you for pointing that out, Your Honor. Now, regarding on that point, the national government, together with the Social Amelioration Program, have already provided cash assistance or in-kind assistance. Aside from the national government, we also have international community, non-local government units, and even community pantry provided by these organizations. Your Honor, we want to propose to fill in the gap with these target beneficiaries, knowing that 66% of them did not receive any financial support from the local government unit. Thank you.
Fritz, you have 2 minutes to cross-examine Jody.
Good evening, Madam Speaker. Nice to see you again. Okay, so have
Nice
you
to see
finished?
you again.
Have you finished constitutional law, Madam Speaker?
Of course, yes.
Okay, good. Are you aware that there is what we call a government?
Exactly.
Okay,
Yes.
so are you aware too that both the national government and the LGUs are part of that government? Correct?
Yes, I am aware of
Okay.
that.
So are you familiar with the current situation? Pandemic, perhaps.
Yes, I'm aware.
Yes. Okay. So would you consider this current situation as unique and extreme?
In what way, Mr. Speaker?
In a way that it's wait, why are you asking me questions? I should be asking you questions anyway. So
Your question is irrelevant, Mr. Speaker. Or
okay, so
vague.
you believe that giving the responsibility solely to the LGUs, which have limited manpower and resources, is preferable than helping one another?
Mr. Speaker, you must be reminded that LGU sources of
The,
funds.
the question answers only yes or no, Madam Speaker.
No.
Okay,
LGUs
so you mean to say
have self-sufficient funds.
okay,
Mr. Speaker.
so you mean to self-sufficient funds? I don't think so. So you mean to say that by allowing the national government to be exonerated to its responsibilities and wash its hands while its citizens are suffering? So you agree with me that we are exonerating the national government and its responsibility and wash its hands while its citizens are suffering?
Mr. Speaker.
No, just answer a yes or a no, ma'am. So you mean to say that we are just exonerating the national government?
I find your question vague, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, so if you were the national government, Madam Speaker, will you allow it?
What will I allow, Mr. Speaker? Be specific, Mr. Speaker.
Will you allow that the national government be exonerated from its responsibility?
Of course not. The national
Okay.
government has also its
Okay,
responsibilities.
thank you. Okay, so are you familiar with the case of Zaval versus Duterte, Madam Speaker?
Enlighten me, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, this is, in this case, the petitioner's question, the
First,
President's
your time is
inclusion.
up. Thank you very much. Fritz, you have 4 minutes to tell us why would it not be necessary for Ayuda to be made mandatory with the LGU covering the costs?
Your Honors, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. This side of the House believes that Ayuda should not be made mandatory with LGU covering its costs. The first affirmative speaker said that Ayuda be made in cash or in kind. I just want to point out that the Ayuda referred to by the affirmative is too broad to refer to all forms of Ayuda which the government may provide. Be it informed that both the national government and the local government units have already social welfare programs addressing the needs of those in need. We have the 4Ps, livelihood programs, and the like. We do not question those, for they have been embedded in the national government's mandate. We just want to focus here on the Ayuda to be given in the times of calamity or public health emergencies. And actually, there's indeed redundancy. Before I present my argument, let me just emphasize that we are not entirely against the proposition that LGU should provide Ayuda, for it has been one of the mandates of every LGUs to provide social welfare services to its constituents. However, we firmly believe that the burden should not be on the LGUs alone. Now, allow me to lay down my arguments why is it not necessary for the LGUs to shoulder the costs of providing Ayuda. My first point is that there's no need for the Ayuda to be made mandatory at there is an existing mechanism regardless of the situation. The local government code mandates that LGUs to provide social welfare services to their constituents. Mandating the LGUs to provide by Ayuda is already a duplication of existing schemes. We have enough legislations and programs doling out assistance, especially to the economically disadvantaged. These are embodied in the Constitution, the Philippine Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Act 2010, and the Bayanihan to Heal as One Acts 1 and 2, which provide for social amelioration programs. As a matter of fact, these legislations and programs are very detailed actually, carefully crafted and budgeted by the national government and implemented by the LGUs. It even encompasses the concerns laid down by the affirmative. What is lacking is not the absence of complete laws and programs because they are already existing. What is wanting is the full implementation and the strengthening of its enforcement. To reiterate, these laws are already what? Mandatory. Although the local government units are the primary responder in cases of national calamity or public health emergencies, the national government is not exonerated on its responsibility to provide for assistance. All the more in extreme circumstances like the present pandemic. Second, the LGUs have no inherent fiscal autonomy. In the Mandanas ruling, the court held that, and I quote, fiscal decentralization does not signify the absolute freedom of the LGUs to create their own sources of revenue and to spend the revenues unrestrictedly. In fact, certain limitations can be imposed by Congress in all forms of decentralization for local autonomy, whether as to power or as to administration, is not absolute. Local revenues only account for less than 1% of the country's gross domestic product. That is why the LGUs are very, very, very dependent on the national government for the funding of the projects. Ladies and gentlemen, we are arguing that if the local government units is solely covering the costs of Ayuda, then their funds cannot shoulder the needs of all its constituents, and the same will eventually deplete. Just because there's fiscal decentralization does not necessarily entail absolute freedom of the LGUs to create their sources of revenue and to spend the revenues unrestrictedly. For all these reasons, the negative trend takes its debate. Thank you. Yes, Your Honor.
All those assistance programs that you mentioned from the LGU, have any of them been given as a mandate?
Yes, Your Honor. These reliefs that I mentioned have already been mandated by the Constitution, the Philippine Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Act, and the present Bayanihan to Heal as One Act and 2. So these are embodied in the laws and actually mandated by laws, Your Honor.
Tony, you have 2 minutes to cross-examine Fritz.
Good evening, Mr. Speaker.
Good evening, Madam Speaker.
Kindly answer with a yes or no. So are you aware that around 90,000 businesses, mostly micro, small, and medium enterprises, remain closed as the coronavirus pandemic continues to cause chaos on the economy?
Yes, Madam Speaker.
Are you aware of that? Thank you. Micro, small, and medium enterprises have a very important role in developing the Philippine economy, correct?
Yes, Madam Speaker.
On the other hand, you could see that the national government or Department of Social Welfare and Development, in partnership even with the local government units and other agencies, have provided cash assistance to poorest households, vulnerable groups. We also have low-income families in the country, correct?
Qualified, yes.
Exactly. Now, I would like to point out that not just the national government, but even international community, the non-governmental organization, have several programs in place which focuses on low-income households and families. You could see to the fact that 66% of enterprises report that they did not receive financial support from their social network in the government.
Qualified, yes, Madam Speaker.
You also conceded the fact that 90% of all businesses are categorized as micro business here in the Philippines, as stipulated in the Department of Trade and Industry database.
Qualified, yes, Madam Speaker.
Now, the impact of micro enterprises, not just micro enterprises, even small enterprises, medium enterprises growth, the local and domestic economy will, greatly contributes to gross domestic product, taxes and duties, and employment and jobs creation. Now, with the opposite bench,
thank you, speakers. Second affirmative speaker, Jamaica, you have 4 minutes to tell us why would it be beneficial for Ayuda to be made mandatory with the LGU covering the costs.
Honorable judges, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. The affirmative side of the bench will also argue tonight the beneficiality of the proposition and why our policy must be made mandatory with the LGU covering the costs. As established by our first speaker, we will make Ayuda mandatory for micro enterprises instead. The first negative speaker failed to disprove the necessity of our proposal. They were not able to clash our contention to provide mandatory Ayuda to micro enterprises. Ladies and gentlemen, as discussed by our first affirmative speaker, our policy pushes for a one-time mandatory cash assistance to micro enterprises to serve as aid in recovering, especially that 66% of these micro enterprises were not able to receive any assistance from the government or from their social network. Let me just point out some of the points raised by the previous speaker. He said that LGUs are not self-sufficient, but under the law, particularly Section 1 to 9 of the RA 7160, LGUs are mandated and they are allowed to find other sources of income for their self-sustenance. In addition, we are not claiming that the national government will be exonerated from their responsibility. We have Bayanihan 1, Bayanihan 2, and at present there is Bayanihan 3, okay, which is already from the national government serving assistance to local beneficiaries. What we want to avoid is redundancy and instead support micro businesses. Ladies and gentlemen, why is our proposal beneficial? These are my two main reasons. First point, making Ayuda mandatory for micro enterprises will create more revenue for the government through capacitating these businesses and trigger spending. According to a study conducted by the ADB, it showed that over 70% of Philippine MSMEs had cash flow problems due to the pandemic, forcing business owners to borrow from friends and family. According to the February 2021 research entitled COVID-19 Impact on MSMEs under the lockdown, despite moving to recovery mode after half a year after the lockdowns, micro and small enterprises are continuing to confront a sharp drop in demand and revenue. The same research has identified that among the MSMEs, micro enterprises felt the more serious impact of the pandemic. The law, particularly RA 9501, recognizes the potential of enterprises for more employment and economic growth. Our law recognizes that these enterprises are crucial for our Philippine economy. 90% of these businesses are micro enterprises. Thus, a stimulus package that will be directed to them can help capacitate and boost them, trigger spending, enable their enterprises to move towards recovery of their businesses. Second point, economic and social benefits of providing stimulus to micro enterprises are also recognized by law. RA 9501 provides that the state recognizes the vital role of, yes, Your Honor.
That sounds all wonderful and great in a vacuum or in general, but where is the unique contribution of the LGUs on those points?
The LGUs will be covering the costs that will be shouldered by the LGUs, Your Honor, will of course vary and depend on the sworn statements of assets, capitalization, gross income, and gross receipts, and also, of course, the number of employees of these micro enterprises. And this is similar to tax computation, and which will be proven later more by our practicability speaker. In addition, benefits of this form of Ayuda can promote continuous economic recovery for the countries because these are micro enterprises registered with our municipal and city government. Thank you and good evening.
Edgar, you have 2 minutes to cross-examine Jamaica.
Good evening, Madam Speaker.
Good evening, Council.
Have you received Ayuda, Madam Speaker?
In kind, yes.
Yes. Is it from the LGU, Madam Speaker?
It's from national government because it's from Bayanihan Act.
What kind of Ayuda is it, Madam Speaker? Is it social amelioration program or SAP or livelihood assistance grants?
It was only in kind, Council.
In kind? What do you mean?
I mean sustenance, like food.
Food, basically food. Okay. But do you know? Do you happen to know someone who received one, like the social amelioration program?
Um, I'm not so sure, but I think there are people who have received, definitely.
But have you read about social amelioration program, Madam Speaker?
Yes, yes, Council.
Do you know that the implementation
What is
of
the question?
yes? Do you know that the implementation of the social amelioration program was launched to LGU during the first tranche of implementation? These
Of course,
include
Council.
this includes
LGUs are crucial in distributing the
yes,
Ayuda.
thank you, Madam Speaker. And this includes livelihood assistance programs that is provided for the Ayudas to micro enterprises, Madam Speaker. Do you know how is it
Council?
implemented?
Enlighten me, Council.
Yes. Let me enlighten you, Madam Speaker. Aside from the records of the SWB in the Listahanan 2 or National Household Targeting System, the LGU was given the discretion to choose whom will they include in the roster of beneficiaries based on...
Council, that's why we want to avoid anomalies from distribution.
Thank you, Mr. Madam Speaker. Are you aware that in the subsequent implementation of social amelioration funds or program, the SWB opted that service provider will implement...
But their database, Council, is irregular and full of anomalies. Thank you, Council.
Thank you, speakers. Edgar, we have 4 minutes to tell us why would it be not beneficial for Ayuda to be made mandatory with the LGU covering the costs.
The affirmative side argues to provide Ayudas to micro enterprises or micro businesses. However, small businesses is not the proper recipients of Ayuda. Ayuda is not meant for businesses but loan facilities. August members of this body, good afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, we are faced with the possibility of living in a country where local government units will eventually become bankrupt and immobile, having these finances being spent on dole-outs instead of relevant social services. Ayuda to be made mandatory with LGU covering the cost is not beneficial to the LGUs and to its constituents. First, to make Ayuda mandatory will unduly burden the local government units. We have to be reminded of the basic services and facilities of the local government units based on Section 17 of the Local Government Code. Nowhere in the Act that mandates or alludes that LGUs should provide ayudas as defined by the affirmative side. While they may argue that the absence of a clear provision does not mean prohibition to come up with one, we maintain that the same will be unduly burden to the LGUs, which services should have been used for relevant matters and services as prescribed by the code. Second, Ayuda implementation by the LGUs is very vulnerable to corruption. On a national report on April 18, 2021, the problems which led to the dismal of the implementation of the most recent Ayuda with the name Social Amelioration Program, or SAP, was that there was politicking or palakasan among local officials when the DSWD gave the LGUs control to disburse the cash. Reports of anomalies surfaced, which ended up with the Ombudsman suspending in September last year of at least 89 barangay chiefs and 13 mayors in different parts of the country for alleged irregularities in the Ayuda implementation. Against this background, making Ayuda mandatory with the local government units shouldering the cost when the perpetrators of corruption of Ayuda given by national government units are LGU officials is just like giving them the opportunity of corruption with the public burden by difficult tasks by which to make these LGU officials
More small businesses.
Making Ayuda mandatory with LGUs covering the cost will result to an even distribution of assistance.
Mr. Speaker.
And inequality. Yes, Your Honor.
In the alternative, let's say national government, don't we also see the same issues of corruption?
There are allegations, Your Honor, but it has not been proven. Basically, the study that we have only these local government units were proven to have neglected its duty to provide this cash assistance to the intended beneficiary. May I continue, Your Honor? We know for a fact that LGUs are categorized according to population, income, geographical area, among others, and this results in LGUs receiving higher subsidies and LGUs receiving less from the national government. LGU income is also different. We have highly urbanized cities treated side by side with low-income LGUs, with residents who may be comparing how high and less ayuda they will receive. Will this not result to more issues of inequality and impression of injustice? We rather propose to maintain the status quo, the present ayuda system, when amount is uniform and evenly distributed.
Your time is up. Jamaica, you have 2 minutes to cross-examine Edgar.
In council.
Okay.
Okay. So, council, are you aware that 90% of the businesses in the Philippines are micro enterprises?
Yes, definitely, Madam Speaker.
Okay. Yes. You have mentioned earlier that if our proposal will be pushed for, the LGUs will be unduly burdened. Is that your contention?
Yes, Madam Speaker.
Okay. So you have mentioned also that instead of spending or providing for the LGUs, for the micro enterprises, the money should be spent on basic facilities instead. That is your contention, right?
Yes. Yes, definitely.
But do you recognize the benefits and the advantages of protecting our micro enterprises, Council?
Definitely, Madam Speaker. I should know because I am the implementer of the LAG implementation or the local assistant.
That is nice to know, but let me proceed. Okay. So, did you know, you should know, apparently, that micro enterprises are recognized by the state as crucial for the developing economy?
Yes, that's why
Yes,
we have
correct. But it is also your contention that downloading national funds to LGUs in social amelioration is prone to anomalies and palakasan and politicking, as stated in your
not
speech.
necessarily, Madam Speaker.
As stated in your speech? No?
Yes, qualification.
Oh, okay. So you're qualifying it as a yes. But isn't it more practicable and beneficial that we instead support the LGUs will support micro enterprises, and these are direct transactions from the government, from the local government to micro enterprises instead.
There are already supports given by the national government, the local government units, Madam Speaker, and it is...
Council, those are for beneficiaries. But as we have stated, did you know that 66% of micro enterprises were not
the local government units because the
Your
national
time is up.
government studying technical assistance.
No more questions.
Speakers, thank you very much. Third affirmative speaker, Trix, you have 4 minutes to tell us why would it be practicable for Ayuda to be made mandatory with the LGU covering the costs.
Your Honors, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. The speakers of the opposite bench have been presenting assertions that are not substantially backed by pieces of evidence, and most importantly, they failed to counter our policy and instead argued something immaterial to this debate. Your Honors, we firmly believe that it is practicable for Ayuda to be made mandatory with LGUs covering the cost because of the following reasons. First, we already have mechanisms in place in efficiently identifying these businesses and computing equitable amounts in which we could base the amount to dispense in the stimulus check for business enterprises. Pursuant to Memorandum Circular Number 1, 2020 of Bureau of Local Government Finance, computation of local business taxes is prescribed thereon. This is where we pattern the determination of the amount to be dispensed to each businesses. Also, RA 9501 of Magna Carta for MSMEs, Section 4, further provides for the guidelines eligibility for government assistance, which we could utilize in implementing our policy. Moreover, LGUs shall utilize the remaining calamity fund to finance this program. Further, the ILG Circular Number 2 authorized LGUs to realign the respective available and unencumbered local funds from their current and continuing appropriations, including but not limited to, Development Fund, Gender and Development Fund, Special Education Fund, and other unutilized fund or unreleased subsidies and transfers. Further, Your Honors, LGUs have other sources of income in which they are mandated under Local Government Code or RA 7140, Section 129. Your Honors, our existing systems is essentially is seemingly sufficient to propel us to pursue the program we are proposing. The system in place will help implement the said project. Other countries doing the same and is found out to be efficient. According to the International Monetary Fund Policy Tracker Report, the United States, with their American Rescue Plan, which provides another round of coronavirus relief, the plan focuses on investing in different sectors, including businesses. Also, their Paycheck Protection Program and Healthcare Enhancements Act and CARES Act or Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economy Security Act includes budgets for additional forgivable small business administration loans and guarantees to help small business that retain workers. Also, the United Kingdom made measures to support businesses, including direct grants for small firms and firms in the most effective sectors. Even our neighboring countries, Your Honors, like Thailand, Myanmar, and Vietnam, established a COVID-19 fund to provide for affected businesses. Your Honors, according to the United Nations Global Compact's discussion on helping small businesses survive, which comprise 90% of companies across the globe and more than 50% of the world's total employment, are voting heavily. Yes, Your Honor.
When you say mandatory, does that mean that there will be penalties for LGUs who will be unable to provide?
Thank you so much for pointing that out, Your Honor. But we do not intend to punish the LGUs for not being able to provide to our businesses, but rather we encourage them to help support our small businesses to help them survive these times of pandemic. Now, to continue, 50% of the world's total.
Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, to follow up the question of Mr. Micah, but how do you define mandatory? If you're not planning to punish the LGU for not being able to provide, then how do you exactly define the word mandatory in your argument?
Thank you so much for pointing that out, Your Honor. By mandatory, we mean it is just encouraged, and it is being called for by the government. Well, I can see in a way there might be disciplinary actions that our national government will be putting onto our LGUs had they not been able to provide for our small businesses. Now, to continue, by
Okay,
enabling
thank
them.
you, Mr. Speaker. Your time is up.
Thank you so much.
Spencer, you have 2 minutes to cross-examine Trix.
Good evening, Mr. Speaker. Let me just clarify, you defined mandatory as encouraged?
In a
You
way.
said earlier? You said earlier. Alright, so
It's
encouraged,
irrelevant.
is that how we define mandatory as defined in statutory construction?
What's the relevance of your question?
May I ask if is it a yes or no? Because the mandatory word was made used in the proposition or in the motion. So are we going to say that mandatory is just encouraging the local governance?
Well, I
Yes or no?
mentioned
Is it a yes or no?
that there should be
Council,
disciplinary
is it a
actions
yes
that our
or
national
no?
government
Is it a yes
will
or no?
provide to the local
No,
government.
let me
will not
proceed to my
be
next
able
question,
to-
Mr. Speaker. Are you aware that LGUs have limited sources of income?
Yes, I am aware,
But
there is
yes,
a
thank you so
mandate
much.
for
Are you-
LG.
Mr. Speaker,
Sorry, I like
are
your
you aware that
question.
LGUs have long been
Address only
implementing
pandemic.
assistance programs through their respective local social welfare and development offices and agricultural
They
offices?
have long been
Where
providing
is-
assistance, but that is not
Yes,
to be the
thank you
case
so
of
much for
council.
acknowledging that fact, Mr. Speaker.
They
Are you aware that on top
efficient?
Are you aware that on top of the localized programs, the national government through the DSWD and the DTI, they also fund various programs for the MSMEs?
Again, that is not found to
And
be
is it a
efficient.
yes or no?
Compared
Is
to
it
our
a yes or
proposed
no, Mr.
policy,
Speaker?
I will not
Is it a
concede
yes
to
or
that.
no? Are you
I will
aware?
not
Are you
concede.
aware? So you are aware, yes, because you are telling us that is not enough, allegedly not enough, but there's no data to support that. Also, with these, no, isn't it redundant and impractical to allocate funds for an Ayuda system?
Why would it be redundant, council, when in fact they are providing for
There
our
is already a
local
program for
small
MSMEs
business
coming from the
enterprises?
DTI and LGU. I know. that there are programs already existing in the livelihood section and also in the DTI.
But again,
So there
I will
are existing-
reiterate it, Council, that is not
Mr.
sufficient.
Speaker,
So
let
we
me
are
ask you,
proposing
isn't
something that is sufficient,
it
that could
more
be
proper
utilized in
that
times of
loans,
pandemic.
amnesty, and condonation will be provided instead of the Ayuda system that
Speakers,
you are
your time
proposing?
is up. Spencer, you have 4 minutes to tell us why would it not be practicable for Ayuda to be made mandatory with the LGU covering the costs.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. The proposition or the motion is wrongly interpreted and the set parameters are improper. Let me tell you why. Because one of the speakers from the negative or the affirmative side made mention that there will be a one-time cash assistance for MSMEs to support them to recover. What is the basis? How do we know that they will really recover? What is the assurance they can give us that they will recover from the one-time cash assistance that they will be providing? And also, is it enough? Is it enough to give one-time assistance and then they will automatically recover and support the government? Also, if this will be wrongly implemented, isn't it a waste of resources? Whereas it could already be given to a more meaningful purpose, to a bigger project that could benefit more people rather than just a certain group of MSMEs. And also, MSMEs, ladies and gentlemen, are already covered under the BMBE Act of the DTI to support them in some ways to prosper their business. And also, I believe that the other side or the opposing side are unaware that cash dole-outs for MSMEs are already given by the LGUs prior to the pandemic. So this is already an existing project by the LGUs mandated by local ordinances. And also, isn't it improper to give ayuda to businesses? They are businesses; they can sustain their own businesses. But should it be more proper to give them loan facilities and also the condonation and amnesty of taxes to further support them? Now, ladies and gentlemen, let me highlight 3 points. First, many LGU leaders have been laboring for support from the national government due to the exhaustion of LGU funds to sustain their existing programs, assistance programs for all, not just the poor, but also the MSMEs. Furthermore, the LGUs have dedicated its funds to all its regular programs for MSMEs, which benefits the residences, and of course, it is mandated under Articles 2, 13, and 15 of the 1987 Constitution. Also, DBCC said that due to the COVID-19 pandemic, LGUs could only collect roughly 41% of the goal for 2020. So it's not practical because LGUs are running out of funds. How will we support another Ayuda system for MSMEs if we are already running out of funds? Also, to my second point, it is redundant to adopt a new... Yes, Your Honor.
In theory, in which world would there be more aid to the needy? A world where aid is mandated, or a world where aid is purely voluntary?
It could be both, Your Honor, that there will be a mandatory ayuda and also there will be an ayuda that is voluntary. Can I proceed po? Now, ladies and gentlemen, there is a duplication of projects because DSWD has already promulgated 4Ps, UCP, Kalahi, SEEDS, Sustainable Livelihood Programs, the LAG, and of course, Emergency Subsidy and SAP, and all the other services. And of course, the LGUs, as counterparts, we also have livelihood startups, livelihood trainings, cash assistance for MSMEs, dole-outs from the Agriculture and Productivity Offices, and social pension. That social pension that could be a startup for MSMEs. So would it be practical to fund a new program than to improve the existing programs? I doubt. Lastly, ladies and gentlemen, DILG recorded 369 LGUs which failed in the implementation of the national government cash aid program during the pandemic. Take note that this is just the first tranche of the said program, notwithstanding the fact that many also failed in the succeeding stage. Are we prepared to face another failure given our limited manpower and resources in the LGUs? We cannot afford to test the waters in this time of pandemic. We are faced with innumerable challenges in government which makes it impractical to allocate funds and programs to which we are not sure of. Ladies and gentlemen, let us put in mind, how do we solve a problem? Do we solve them with another potential problem? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Trix, you have 2 minutes to cross-examine Spencer.
Okay, firstly, would like to say that our policy will not create another liability because it's already a responsibility.
Yes.
Meaning by saying mandatory, it means that LGUs only fulfill one of its mandates, which they are already answerable under LGU. So Council, you're aware that Ayuda is only provided not to prosper businesses, right? But to help them survive the pandemic.
Yes, Mr.
Yes
Speaker,
or no?
qualified
Of
yes.
course. That is why it is just an assistance. Council, I am assuming you are aware of the policies implemented by other countries regarding the response to COVID-19.
Come again,
correct?
Mr. Speaker. Come again.
You're aware of the policies provided by the other countries in COVID-19?
Other countries,
The
Mr.
policy
Speaker,
tracker
which may not
report by
be
International
applicable in our
Monetary
country
Fund.
because we have
So that
passport
report
countries
shows that,
in third world
Council, please
countries.
respect my time. That report
Yes,
shows
Mr.
that other
Speaker, thank
countries
you.
have been making efforts in providing for businesses, and it has also been
Good for them, Mr. Speaker.
effective. So, Council, isn't it right, Council, that our government is mandated by the Constitution to promote general welfare? Yes or no?
Qualified yes, Mr. Speaker.
Of course, it is in Section 5, Article 2. So you would agree
I
with
am
me,
aware
Council,
of
if I
that,
say
Mr.
that
Speaker.
helping 90% of the businesses in the entire country is promotion of general welfare.
Qualified yes,
Of
Mr.
course,
Speaker,
as
but
it
not
will boost
necessarily.
the economy of our country, of course.
There's no
So don't you
assurance,
think
Mr.
that
Speaker.
providing
There is
assistance
no
to our
study to
businesses
provide.
is a big help to the state of and the people?
It could be a big help, Mr.
Of
Speaker, but
course,
that is
Council,
not
please
the
respect my
primary
Council.
concern
Again,
in this
enabling these businesses that comprise 90% of total businesses in the entire country would be beneficial to the welfare of the people and the state. Your Honors, it is clear that the opposite bench would do the same thing we are proposing to our government. Our proposing our
It's
government
not-
would do
it
to the
is not
public
the-
without no
it
further
is not-
questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, speakers, and thank you, of course, for the wonderful round. At this point, let us hear a few words from our judges. Let's start with Attorney Cecia.
Hello to all the speakers. I cannot commend you enough for doing so well in researching your positions, whether it be the affirmative or the negative. I'm sure when you guys come to court in the future, you will always be prepared. Also, right now I'm having again a difficult time because you are both compelling. Your arguments are all compelling. I'm in a flip-flopping stance right now, but congrats to all of you, and let's see what will be the result. And thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Attorney. Let us hear a few words from Attorney Happy.
Hello, congratulations everybody. That was a very strong finish to the debate competition today. So a few words lang for each of the teams. For the affirmative side, I commend you for being consistent all throughout and also starting with setting the parameters, giving the definition of terms and policies. And for the negative side, I commend you for starting strong and for finishing strong. So that's one of your advantages in this round. Now, a few words. The affirmative has the right to make feasible definitions of each of the terms in its proposition. That's why in the beginning, they limited their proposition to micro and small businesses. Now, I have noticed that the last speaker for the negative side challenged the definition, and that's also the right of the other team. However, when you challenge a definition, that it is much better, or really you have to challenge it in the early part of your by the first speaker in order to set the boundaries for your arguments. Because once the affirmative team already set the perimeters, they have already set their arguments, which you as a negative team should be able to counter or to argue also. So, although it was in the later part, I'm glad that someone already pointed out that there is a definition that should have been challenged. So that's part of the learning in today's debate competition. Other than that, I am really happy that this is how it ended. It was very strong. It was very entertaining and very I've learned a lot. So congratulations. It's very close time. Good luck to all of you. And see you next year, hopefully. First year pa more, second year. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, attorney, and of course, words from our chief adjudicator, attorney Micah.
Hello. Yeah, it was. I really enjoyed it, and to echo Attorney Happy's sentiments, if I could try to sum it up without necessarily giving away where I might be inclined to decide towards. So we did find maybe a somewhat unexpected proposal. So then the debate will then be decided by how the other side is able to engage, to challenge, and to really question why. And then afterwards, of course, we will wait for how the proponents will defend. And so for me, how I came, or at least my initial impressions of the debate, that is where I will base my decision. Of course, probably we and the judges will still talk it out. But I don't know if you are first-time debaters. I don't know if you are seasoned debaters. But despite being in a pandemic, this is a very hopeful occasion that despite the pandemic and your studies, you're still able to give such a valiant and very honorable conduct of yourselves during this debate. And so, congratulations already to everyone, and it's a pleasure.
Thank you so much, attorney, and of course, thank you, judges. On behalf of the participating universities of this event, we are very grateful for sparing us your time, effort, and knowledge. So once again, judges, you may now proceed to the judges' lounge. Thank you. So the results of the debate competition, will be announced tomorrow during the championship round. So, officers, do you still have any announcements? Okay, so I think this ends our program for today. Thank you all for participating, and of course, see you again tomorrow. This is Junat's Ives Churahas, and have a good night.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Buksu, for hosting a very wonderful event.
Thank you, Liceo. Liceo.
Ma'am Tony.
Hi, Sir Spencer.
Lumipat pa. May ka na pala.
Trigor. Joke lang.
Napakali sa'yo, ma'am.
Try lang, sir. Personal question. Joke. Joke lang. Please, sir. Affiliated.
Oh, okay. Kaya pala. Beta, ma'am.
Regards to sa Liceo, sir.
Yeah, wala na sa ko.
That my best regards. Ay, oo, no. Tama.
I'm back with the LGU.
Ikaw pa. Kahit ka.
Good night, everyone. See you all tomorrow.
Thank you, LSG.
Ma'am Texon, grabe. Last year we saw you. Now we saw you again. Yeah, Kishi. Yeah, nag-stop na transfer siya sa school due to work. So kami lang gihapon yung Babylin. Honestly, Babylin. Sana graduating. Yeah.
Thank you, Sir Spencer.
Yeah, see you soon. Oh, wala nang tayo pandemic.
Thank you.
I love the best in lipstick.
Available sa akong
Grabe statement yung kaayo for me, ma'am, since last year. Nagyod kayo mga pandor.
Wala dito yun.
Sige ma'am, bye-bye, bye-bye. See you all tomorrow. Okay, pwede na mag-leave everyone, LSG sa Buksu. Can we already leave the Zoom group?
Yes, you may leave now. Thank
Thank
you
you,
very much,
ma'am.
everyone.
Thank you, ma'am. Are we going to use the same link for tomorrow?
Yes, sir. We're going to use the same link for tomorrow's program.
Okay po. Thank you so much. Great hosting, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.